Right, so now it's time to check the lug contact. Off camera, I have reassembled the bolt with everything back in it because we need the cocking piece to interact with the sear of the trigger and everything like that. I have installed the new trigger made by Rifle Basics. I think in the introduction or in the earlier video I said Bix and Andy. Well, I was wrong. I think I said Bix and Andy, but it is definitely a Rifle Basics SAV2 trigger, advertised as drop-in, and as we all know, that's never the case. Granted, it did not require fitting or gunsmithing or anything like that, but certainly not drop-in. I hate that term, I really do. I mean, they're implying like you take it and just simply drop it and it goes right into place and works. No, it doesn't. This one required a little bit of modification to the sear as well, the little bolt release tab. I had to grind off a tiny bit, because it would not allow me to put the bolt back in. So the very tip of that bolt stop release had to be just relieved, just a touch. So like I always do, if we're gonna lap anything, we're gonna put the trigger in. There's no sense in not doing that, because you're not using the rifle without the trigger in it. The trigger puts pressure on everything, causing the bolt to cant slightly up. So if we're going to lap anything, it has to be in that position. Otherwise, what's the point? Now, that being said, the Savage, as I mentioned earlier on, has the floating bolt head. So if we pivot the gas protection lugs out of the way, this is the main bolt head. These are the lugs that actually lock up inside the action. And they do have a little pivot. They have a little bit of float. So inevitably they are going to self-center because due to that slight pivoting action. So that's why I'm not going to do any cuts really anywhere on this bolt. I can't really hold it in such a way that it's going to be in line and concentric with the rest of the bolt body. It's almost pointless, just like, I mean, it's hard to explain, but you saw earlier this entire bolt head assembly comes out, and you can replace it too. We can replace that with a high quality, I know PTG makes them, maybe some other companies. So that could easily be replaced, and I'm sure they're going to be truer and nicer than they are. Actually, I've seen them before. They are nicer. However, again, being a floating bolt head, if that even matters, like, kind of defeating the purpose on all that stuff. So that's why, number one, we can't put a sleeve because of the cocking piece. You could put one up here. Savages have the floating bolt head. That's going to defeat all that stuff, right? So it's not like we're skipping anything here. It's just there's really no need for it. You could sleeve it all day. You could put the tightest sleeve in there. That floating bolt head is still gonna contact. So in my experience, there's no need to even lap these. I always check, so you never know. I never assume anything. Assume nothing, and always check. That's my motto. So we're gonna check, but I bet you anything, we got good contact, no need for lapping. Lapping would be tough too, as well, because of this gas protection lug that's in the Savage design, because you're going to put lapping compound on the backs of the lugs, and then this is just going to swipe it right off, and then you're going to be lapping in kind of these two surfaces. You can put it inside the action, but anyway, let's check before I get too deep into that. So what we're going to do is color up the lugs inside the action, or inside the receiver, with a Sharpie marker. Now, of course, there's a theory, I'm not sure if it's proven or not, they say the red Sharpie marker is thinner than the black. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get that anal retentive about that. So those lugs inside the receiver are now, the lug abutments, excuse me, are now black. Right? Okay, we're going to put this in to my bench vise just so I can manipulate the bolt a little more naturally as it were in a stock. Okay, and then we're going to hold that snug enough that it's not going to move on me. So we're going to push forward and close the bolt, right? And then we're just going to give it like 3 swipes. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so then we're going to push forward, open the bolt, pull it out. And there is slight transfer on each bolt, but the important thing is inside here. Let's just have a look, see, and sure enough, again, I'm going to come up here and look through the viewfinder so I can make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yeah, there you go. So we got super good contact there, 100% I would say, on both lugs under the trigger and the influence of the trigger. So, as I suspected, no lapping is required here. There's no point in doing it. In fact, we'll probably screw up the surfaces that we just spent so much time truing up so nicely. So, super big benefit of the Salvages is this floating bolt head. You get rid of that hideous barrel nut, you put on a shouldered barrel fit and chambered to your particular action by a competent gunsmith. This is you've got an advantage going on for yourself. All right, so next thing to do, take some measurements. We're going to get all of our measurements for the thread tenon, and we're going to have to make a few test stubs to make sure and verify the new major diameter. So we'll be doing that next. Fully accurized action. Bolt is all good to go. Now we have a recoil lug on the Savage here, and it's got a little bit of a pin style thing going on. Well, it's silly to do all this truing work on the face of the receiver and the threads, get everything nice, straight, square, and then just use the existing recoil lug, especially a factory variation where are we trusting that that's straight and true now, you know? Now the inside diameter, I do have a jig for the lathe to make that bigger, which inevitably we're going to have to do. But the parallel surfaces here, unfortunately at this time, I do not have a surface grinder at my disposal. Don't have a lot of, even if I had the budget for it, I don't know where I'd put it at this point. So we're gonna do the next best thing, which is hand lapping on a stone. Better than nothing. Is it ideal? No. If you're careful, you can do this properly, and you can actually watch your progress because the lug is blued anyway. So what we got to do is pop out that nub, the alignment pin, essentially, and it's just pressed in there. So we'll just knock that out. Wow, that wasn't very tight at all. And then we will just proceed in a figure 8 pattern to hand stone the front and back. And we're getting close. I don't know if you can see that from way back there, but ideally my stone should be a lot bigger, but again, this is what I have to work with. Now we go in a figure 8 pattern to avoid dishing it out. Just, I learned this from machinists. This is the way to, if you're going to do this by hand, this is the way to do it. And then I'm trying to put equal kind of 4 points of pressure downward as I'm doing this. Okay, so that side looks good. All the ballooning gone. Sure, there's a little bit left down here, but that's not touching the barrel or the receiver. So now we'll address this side in the same fashion. And actually, here's something to point out. The lug has a very uneven, peculiar contact there with, I don't know what side this was, the barrel or that would have been the barrel side. Oh, sorry, the stupid barrel nut. That's what that is. So those of you defenders of the nut, focus. So defenders of the nut out there, there's another kind of proof for you that it's not ideal. Just very erratic contact. And so a properly shorted barrel with a trued up receiver will do a little better than that. So let's get that out of this. Doesn't take long. Okay, it's all gone. You probably can't see that from back there, but so these stones have a coarse and a fine side. So I'm just going to hit it on the fine side with a little bit of mineral spirits. So for the final lapping, we will use a little bit of mineral spirits on the stone, which will help clean off anything and give it a little bit of a lubrication. Geez, my stone's thirsty here. Move that before I knock it over. Now for this, I'm not pushing very hard, if at all. Clean that all off real nice. And now we have a properly flattened, at least we know both these sides are flat. Parallel, I don't know, probably not. But like I said, better than nothing. Better than nothing, right? And then a second operation, we're gonna have to open up the inside diameter. For the new barrel, so this is probably, yeah, 1.127. Our new barrel is probably gonna be 1.050, something like that, or 1.150, something like that. So for now, we can at least take some measurements and get some dimensions going here. So we're going to take our receiver and bolt, and the bolt again now has stripped condition. There's no cocking piece or spring or firing pin in there anymore. Trigger has been removed. All we want is the measurements from the newly machined receiver face to the existing bolt face, bolt nose. And this is a flat breech system, so we have no counterbore to worry about, or bolt nose recess if you want to call it that. So when I put it in the vise, I want to make sure my bolt handle is not being obstructed or pinched. We want to make sure it's fully closed and it has just a little bit of up and down movement. And I put it in the vise just so I can use two hands to measure. It's just easier for me. Feel like I get a better, more repeatable result. And then make sure everything's clean. All right, come down and just measure. $689. $688. $688. $688 all around, so that's good. That tells us our receiver face is now flat. And our bolt face is relatively the same on all three different points in there. So 688. One more to verify, confirm. Yep. 688. Yep. Right now, the bolt face itself, where the cartridge actually sits, and this will help us determine the headspace value. Then we're going to need to know the recoil lug thickness after I've lapped it. Okay, so that's going to get us our thread tenon length, headspace, and like I said, there's no bolt nose recess to worry about on this one, so we'll be back with some machining. All right, now it is time to open up the recoil lug to the new major diameter of the barrel, plus 5 to 10 thousandths. I like to make it a little bit bigger so that as I'm machining the barrel, the lug has a nice kind of shelf to sit on, and I don't have to get so close to the same diameter. Several different reasons. In the future, if we have to push this chamber back slightly, give us a little bit more meat to work with as we machine the new threads past, to push everything back. Kind of just future-proofing the barrel, making sure it's got some usability moving forward for the future, because inevitably the throat's going to get shot out and whatnot. So we're shooting for 1.145 to 1.150, somewhere in that vicinity. So in the machine, I still have to center this, but we've got my own custom-made jig that I made last year for this purpose. There's the high side and not touching anything. Okay. Now it's not super critical to get it dead on. Plus there's a little variation going on in there. What I'm most focused on is just getting all 4 jaws within the same sort of space. Centered, that is. Because we're machining more than a few thousandths out, so it's going to essentially true itself up. So as long as we're centered in relation to the chuck jaws, I'm happy. Like that, that's fine. And everything's nice and tight. So that slight variation is just, that'll all be cut out here. Okay, let's take about 10 thousandths here. And we'll just get a measurement. Now we're 3.5, something like that. 1.135. Let's take another 10. And then take a ghost pass on the way out. This machine has a feed reverse on the fly. Love that feature on this Grizzly. So yeah, we're looking for 145 to 150. Right about there. Oops. Yep, looks like we're about 150 if we stretch it. So we can take a bit of a finishing pass here, and so that's all there is to it. It's a quick and easy operation, but for sure essential. And another nice thing is I didn't actually cut into that pinhole there in the lug, so that's still got material around it, so bonus there. But yeah, that's the recoil lug work. Okay, so off camera, I was able to make a series of stubs to check to verify the new major diameter of this blueprinted receiver. Accurized and trued up. So my left hand is the one we're going with, and then these two, so I started 1.050 or 1.48, went down to 1.40, and ended up with a 1.35, which is actually pretty close to what I took out of the threads when I was truing up the action. These two are too tight, so these I will put in my little kit for Salvages. I've already got a series of them from other jobs, but didn't quite have those two exact sizes, so we'll just keep those for future use. And then the recoil lug has been trued on the parallel surfaces and then bored out for the new thread tenon. And so this will fit quite nicely. Don't cross thread anything. But it's threads in by hand with very little slop, just enough clearance to, and I neglected to deburr the very edge as I was parting it, so that's why I'm using a little rag. I don't want to cut my fingies because it's very sharp, so I will deburr that later. But screws in with the recoil lug now, and no rattle. And then this will also verify that our bolt should be able to close right there. Then we can come in and just touch right there, and then to verify our thread tenon length, I can go ahead and get a feeler gauge in there, see what this little gap measures, measure the entire length, subtract that little gap, and then subtract another 0.08 for clearance. And I've already calculated it on our build sheet here, but it's nice to just verify, double check, before we get that new barrel in the lathe. So I will do that. I've got all my measuring tools out, ready to go for the barrel job. And of course, here is our brand new 30-inch Brooks barrel. 31-inch, but we're going to cut off an inch. So we will get this out of its protection, whatever you call that, Chinese finger trap. And we'll get this installed in the Grizzly. We're going to start with the breech end for this one because we have plenty of length to play with. So we are going to fit and chamber this in our premium service level, which is going to be centering off of the chamber section of the bore.